Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Bell, and welcome to Relational Conversations. We're so grateful to have you present with us this afternoon. God is good and He's worthy to be praised. If you're in the house this afternoon, please give us a post and let us know that you're joining us for our Relational Conversations. We're in for a treat this afternoon, but I just want to thank you once again voting last week and allowing your civic responsibility to be upheld. I'm so going out to the polls and allowing God to use you. And now as a community, we have to come together that we can serve together as one body and be unified. So if you're out there right now, that you are in the house, we'll respond back to you, let you know we appreciate you. I'm excited today for our guest. We have a wonderful guest with us today, First Sergeant Shawn of the Spotsylvania Sheriff's Department. He's here with us, an awesome officer, someone who's very active in our community. I just want to say to First Sergeant, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Pastor Bill.
We're so grateful to have you with us. Tell us, First Sergeant, a little more about yourself, what exactly your title is, and how long you've been in the area.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shawn Jones. I'm a first sergeant with the Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office. I've been in law enforcement for about 21 years now. I've worked in all areas of the Sheriff's Office. Also had a stint in corrections as well. I started off at the Pamunkey Regional Jail. Then I also did some work with the Rappahannock Regional Jail as well. I'm a first sergeant assigned to the Administrative Services Division. Inside of that division, community policing and community outreach is one of my responsibilities.
Tell me more about what is community policing.
Community policing is going out into our community and engaging with our community. We engage with everybody from the young kids all the way up to our senior citizens in our community. We do a lot of outreach to give back to our community, and we also provide a lot of safety classes and a lot of training for our residents and our businesses in our community as well.
Do you work with churches?
Of course we work with churches. Yes, you know we do. Come on now. Come on, Pastor. We do a lot with churches. We always looking to partner with churches. We work with our churches to have prayer visuals throughout our community as well. We also work with churches to give back to our community as well. We partner with them in food drives, toy drives, back to school drives. You name it, we partner with our local churches so that we can give back as well. And then we also have a program with the Sheriff's Office that we do. We come out and do security assessments of churches. And we also have a program called Securing the Faithful, which talks about safety tips and how to protect your church and your following.
That's great. You know that recently in the news, there's been a lot about police brutality and police corresponding with the community. Tell us more about some of the policies that you all are enacting.
Well, first of all, we're one of the law enforcement agencies that want to prevent things before it happens. We want to get out with our community and engage with our community to see what's going on, to see what some of their concerns are, and from there go back and bring it down to our deputies so they know what's going on in the community as well. We like to have open dialogue, open conversation, so that what's happening in other areas do not happen here in Spotsylvania County. One of the things that happened after the George Floyd incident was we went back to the sheriff and we implemented a duty to intervene policy. And what I mean by the duty to intervene policy is if they see a law enforcement officer, as a law enforcement officer, if I see one of my colleagues, one of my fellow deputies doing something that's not right, or treating somebody unfairly, or abusing their powers, we have a policy where we must step in and stop that so we won't have any of the things that happen in other places happen here.
That's interesting. So give me a scenario of how that could happen.
So scenarios like this, if an officer gets into a physical altercation that is not warranted or necessary, we can step in and say, hey, that needs to stop. And also you have the duty to report it as well.
Exactly.
So we're not going to cover it up or anything like that. We're out here to do the right thing and to keep the trust of the public as well.
When was that implemented?
That was implemented right after the recent issues that we had with the George Floyd, but in the protests and so forth. We've met, we sat down and talked, and we went right there and implemented it so that we won't have these issues.
Wow. Duty to intervene. So prior to the George Floyd incident, that wasn't a policy?
That was not a policy, but that's something, immediately after, that's something that we stepped up and did. There's a lot of people looking at the negative stuff that's going on with our law enforcement across the country, and it's not about that. There's bad apples in every profession, and our duty is to go out and protect our citizens and be accountable. I mean, we hold our citizens accountable for their actions, so our officers need to be held accountable for their actions as well. Everybody talks about the negative stuff that law enforcement do, but believe it or not, there's a lot of positive stuff that happens every day in our community with our police officers that people don't even know or hear about.
I agree. Let's talk more about your department's perception of racial profiling.
Okay.
How about that, any recent incidents coming on about that, and if someone feels that being racially profiled, what should they do?
Well, if somebody feels that they're not being treated fairly by a deputy or profile or something to their effect, the thing is, I get a lot of phone calls. Well, not a lot of phone calls, but I get a few phone calls here and there from people that felt that they weren't done right by a deputy. But calling me does not solve the problem.
Gotcha.
So what I encourage everybody to do is, if a deputy did something wrong, if they felt that a deputy didn't treat them right or treated them unfairly, they have the right to come to the sheriff's office and file a complaint form against that particular officer. So once that complaint form is filled out, it's going to be turned over to somebody to investigate as well. So it's documented and so forth. We can't tell you the outcome of what happened with that investigation, but we can, tell you whether or not it was founded or unfounded, but we cannot tell you the disciplinary actions would happen from that. But I do know for a fact that we hold people accountable for actions, and if things need to be done, things will get taken care of and have been done.
Okay, you have a lot of mothers and fathers out there, and I want you to speak into the camera. Oftentimes they have young sons who happen to be African American. If a young man is pulled over in his car, what advice would you give that young man and to their parents so their parents could go back and tell their son how to conduct themselves if they're pulled over?
Well, one of the things I encourage parents to do is sit down and have this conversation with your kid, with your child. I'm a father myself. I've actually sat down and had this conversation with my son. Just because I'm a police officer, I'm still a human being at the end of the day. I still have a family just like everybody else. So I encourage you to sit down and talk to your children. But a lot of times people don't understand that if I'm driving my parents' vehicle and my parents have a dead inspection or dead tags and I'm driving their vehicle, I'm the one that's held accountable for that, even though it's not my vehicle. But we need to sit down with our kids and talk to them. A lot of times when we get pulled over, you see it a lot. We want to get an attitude. We want to talk back. We want to argue. What does that do for us? It escalates things, right? So what I encourage you to do is comply with what the officer tells you to do. Have your driver's license and registration ready and available for them. If you have to move to get to your registration or your wallet, let that officer know what you're doing. Hey, officer, my wallet is in my glove compartment box. It's in my compartment right here, my armrest. Let them know what's going on. Once they have your license in hand, the officer's going to tell you why they stopped you. So just be compliant. Don't be argumentative. Be compliant. Now, if you felt that an officer didn't do what they were supposed to be done, or if you felt that they did something unfairly to you, I encourage you to communicate with your parents and have your parents help you go through that complaint process if necessary. But we do have body cameras.
Good.
Okay, and that's one of the things. We do have body cameras. I had somebody call me and said something happened, and they filled out a complaint. When we investigated and looked at the body cameras, it was a complete different story from what they said. So you got to encourage your kids to be honest with you, be upfront with you. I tell my kids all day long, it's all right to make mistakes, and when we make mistakes, we learn from them and we move on. So, but you got to have open communication with your parents. You got to sit down. It's sad, but you got to sit down and have these conversations with your kids.
So Should a young person ask an officer further questions if an officer says, well, this is not right, or I thought you were speeding? If he says, well, I don't think I was speeding, sir, is that getting out of order, or help me out with that?
It's not getting out of order, it's asking questions, but it's all on the way how you ask questions. Because sometimes people are like, hey, I wasn't speeding, but then it gets in, they want to be argumentative about it. I tell a lot of times, be compliant, be respectful. An officer is going to stop you. You got to have probable cause to stop somebody. You got to have a traffic infraction in order for us to stop somebody. So when an officer stops that person, we have the discretion whether or not we give you a verbal warning, whether or not we give you a written warning, or whether or not we give you a ticket, a uniform traffic summons. We have that discretion. And I tell you, I've been in this business for 21 years. A person's attitude can go a long way. Everybody has a bad day from time to time. You never know until you stop that person and talk to them. I've stopped people. I even wrote them a ticket, and they still want to give me a Christmas card on the side of the road or thank you on the side of the road. Then you have some that get attitudes with you. Thinking all we're doing is harass you. No, we're trying to prevent you from speeding, prevent you from hurting yourself or someone else as well.
What type of bias training do your officers undergo?
Well, one of the things that we've just implemented and had to be done before the end of September was implicit bias training.
Implicit bias training.
Implicit bias training, where you learn about other cultures and different groups, and also it helps you identify whether or not you have stereotypes and so forth as well.
An idea of that. That's interesting.
I mean, everybody has their own biases about certain things from time to time.
Hypothetically, if I'm wearing dreads.
To me, my son has dreads.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, it's just a normal kid that's just expressing his views. He likes to have dreads. One of his things is to grow his dreads out. Me, I like to have I can't grow hair, so I can't get dreads. But, some people may have a bias against somebody with dreads, or maybe stereotype a person with the dreads. But we get people to look at their stereotypes so that we don't have these biases and so forth. Because people, it used to be everybody has dreads or marijuana smokers or Rastas and so forth. That's not the case. It's just young people that are sometimes that have that artistic side of things or that creative side of things, and this growing the hair is the way to express themselves.
Implicit bias training.
Mm-hmm.
Your white officers. What is before I go there, what's the makeup of our Spotsylvania Sheriff's Department when it comes to gender and race?
Okay, you would ask me this question. I just had this a couple weeks ago. I don't have the breakdown.
Gotcha.
But I can say this. Under Sheriff Roger Harris administration, we have increased our minority recruitment.
Good.
We have more minorities on our force than we've had in the previous administration.
Okay.
In the previous administration, we didn't have any African Americans, blacks with rank whatsoever.
Wow.
We have 2 African American sergeants. We have two African American sergeants. We have a first sergeant. We have an African American captain. We have one of our first African American females that works over in our court services divisions. We have African Americans in just about every division within the sheriff's office. So we're increased our numbers, and it's constantly growing. But you got to look at it this way, Pastor. People that look like me and you, do they really want to be the police right now?
Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, let's go with it. I mean, really, realistically speaking, people that look like me and you, do they want to be police? Do they want to be law enforcement? Okay? A lot of folks that look exactly like me don't want to be law enforcement. They don't want to venture out into this career. It's a wonderful career. But a lot of people see what goes on in the media, and based on what they see in the media, they don't want to step out into this profession. I got into this profession for a reason, because I wanted to help people. I wanted to give back to our community. That's why I got into this profession. But if you look at law enforcement across the country, just not black folks, white folks, there's a shortage. White folks don't want to be police officers. Black folks don't want to be police officers. Nobody wants to be the police officer right now because it's not like it used to be. Everybody want to criticize what we do, right? And nobody wants to realize some of the things that we go through, but everybody's quick to criticize. If you look at across this country, a neighboring agency, they're about 18 people short. So there's a lot of shortages going on with law enforcement agencies. They can't find qualified applicants to hire. You go down south to maybe Petersburg, I believe they're about 28 to 30 people short down there. So all across the country is a shortage of people that want to be law enforcement officers. But I put on this badge so that our younger African-American males, our younger African-American females can see a positive role model, somebody doing a positive thing in uniform, so maybe that would change their mind. I mean, it's great to see. I got a young kid right now that I'm mentoring, and he's a young brother, and he wants to get into law enforcement. Just got his first law enforcement job. I talk to this kid just about every day about what's going on. So I'm helping him make those right choices so that he can be successful in his career.
I want to say this in a tactful manner because I think what you just added made a lot of sense. However, can you agree that there are some issues in the law enforcement personnel across this nation that needs to be addressed?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's issues all across this country when it comes to law enforcement, and these are things that need some agencies are good, don't have any problems or any flaws whatsoever. But then there are agencies that have these issues, that have these flaws that need to be addressed. But that's why we need to encourage our people to get into these positions so that we can help stop some of the issues that are going on.
How often does our department recruit? If I want to be a police officer, what are some of the things? So if I'm a young guy or a young man or woman in college or high school, what do I have to do to become part?
Some of the things that we've done recently to increase our recruitment of minorities is going to our historical black colleges and universities to recruit. A lot of our historical black colleges and universities have criminal justice programs. So we reach out to those criminal justice programs to recruit. Another thing that we do is for younger kids, we have an Explorer program. An Explorer program is for kids ages 14 to 21 that gives them the opportunity to explore all different avenues of law enforcement within a law enforcement agency. Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office has an Explorer program. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, I was an Explorer at the University of Mary Washington. Well, it's Mary Washington College then, but now it's the University of Mary Washington College Police Department. So when I was 14, 15, I was doing ride-alongs with police departments to see what's going on.
So if I'm a young person and I want to be part of this Explorers program,
yes,
what are the next steps?
Okay, so what you need to do is contact Deputy Brian Blackington at the Sheriff's Office, and he will give you an application to fill out. We haven't had any meetings because of COVID, but when COVID was not around, we were meeting on a regular basis. We were providing training to our young kids. We're checking on their grades and making sure that they're doing what they need to supposed to be doing in school. And they have the opportunity to come out and work hand in hand with us and assist with different events in the community, such as National Night Out, such as our drug take back. Pretty much anything we do in the community that they can do in a safe manner, they're allowed to do. They have a rank structure as well. Captain, lieutenant, and so forth. They follow their rank structure. They have uniforms. They have uniform inspections as well. But one of the things I tell kids to do if you want a career in law enforcement is you got to make wise decisions and wise choices because we go back and look at your background.
Yes.
Okay. We go back and look at what you did in high school, what you did in college. Okay. We go back in your history. We dig to find out what you've done to make sure that you're a perfect fit for our agency, make sure that you're not out there doing wrong stuff.
Can you tell me more about that? What would prevent me from qualifying based on the background checks?
Drug usage. Okay, any drug that's considered a felony can get you disqualified. Being dishonest, not putting all your information on an application, lying about why you got let go from a job. Those are some things. A lot of times people don't put everything they want you to know on that application. And then our background investigators dig and find out. Once we find out that stuff, you're disqualified.
Okay. The Explorers program, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know we had something of that fashion.
Yes.
In our sheriff's department. So when COVID is over, you think they'll be meeting again?
Oh, yes. Once COVID is over, COVID has slowed a lot of our community outreach programs and a lot of different things that we do. We have a program called VIPS, Volunteers in Police Services, which we might have a retired person in our community that have a special skill set that they can come and volunteer their time at the sheriff's office. For example, we have a guy named Bob Martin. He comes out and does photographs for us. Well, Bob Martin is a retired photographer for the Freelance Star. You may have a retired law enforcement officer that just wants to volunteer a few hours or come out and help out at public events. Same thing, we do an application and we do a background on them as well.
There was a time we had at the sheriff's department, we had a prayer vigil.
Yes.
And you kind of gave your testimony. It was very touching. You talked about maybe the pros and cons of being a deputy sheriff, that sometimes people, because of being an African-American man, people have characterized you in a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
Have said certain things to you. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Same thing as I have family members that don't like what I do because of my career. Or if I come around to a family function, they walk away because of what I do. Some people say you're a sellout. Some people say you're Uncle Tom. No, I'm just me. I'm Shawn. I just decided to do positive things with my life. I decided to work with people and help people, and that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, when I take this uniform off, I'm a human being just like you. I put my pants on the same way you do. I'm a regular human being. I like hip-hop music. I like go-go music. And people don't think that, but that's just me. I'm going to be the same person in and out, but I'm also going to do my job, and I'm also going to do what I got to do to one, give back to my community. One, to be in a place where I can go to the sheriff and say, "Hey, sheriff, this is something that we need to take a look at," and that's one of the things I'm thankful for. Because if I see something that's not right, or I feel it's not right, I'll go straight to the sheriff and let him know how I feel.
Great. There's a lot of conversation about defunding the police department, and I know there might be some biasness because you work for law enforcement, but what is that about from your perspective, defund?
It's,
put more money over here and take.
They want to take money from law enforcement and put them to other avenues and other resources. Some places are going out now saying we need to defund law enforcement and put social workers to respond to suicidal people and so forth. Well, one of the things that people don't understand is they don't see a lot of the training that we go through. One of the things that we have here is the CIT program. And what the CIT program is crisis intervention training. So if we have somebody that's in crisis, we respond to somebody that's in crisis, we have a set of tools and training skill set where we are able to talk to a person, let them vent, let them share their story. And a lot of times people have developed reports with CIT officers, and people that have mental health issues will ask, do you have a CIT officer working? Because CIT officers can communicate with people a lot better. I mean, all of our deputies should be able to communicate, but a CIT officer has the skills to identify when somebody's in crisis.
Yes.
And a lot of times, instead of like you seen back in the day, some agencies will lock a person up and put them in jail for drunk in public when they're not drunk, but they're just having a crisis and they just want something to deal with, to do with them. That's not the case. CIT officer can talk a person into going to the hospital, getting seen by the Rapid Area Community Service Board or mental health, going voluntarily, or we stick around with them if we have to issue what is called an emergency custody order. So emergency custody orders issued for somebody who's in a mental health crisis. Officers with that person for a minimum of 8 hours until they make a decision on what they're going to do with that person. Whether have outpatient treatment, inpatient treatment, or release that person to a family member.
Something just came to mind while you were talking about that. I think at one time I was reading that some things have been banned as far as you using certain force with individuals that might be in police custody, or especially when it came to George Floyd and someone's legs was on his neck. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you hold a person, can you talk about that?
Well, I wasn't there when that happened and so forth, but I know putting a knee in somebody's neck is not the right thing to do. And that's when we have the duty to intervene policy,
Okay.
If we see something like that, we can step in. We've never had a policy at the sheriff's office to use chokeholds. That
Say
was
again?
never a policy.
Strongholds?
Chokeholds.
Chokeholds. Okay.
Chokeholds. That was never a policy. But then once the George Floyd incident happened, a lot of people started talking about police officers using chokeholds. But we've never had a policy. We do not even teach chokeholds in our academy.
Okay.
So that's something that we don't do.
Tell me about your outreach before we leave.
Okay.
I know Christmas is coming up, and what are you all planning?
Oh, this is my favorite time of the year. It's Operation Blue Christmas. For those of you who do not know what Operation Blue Christmas is, it's a program for us to give back to our community. It's a program to help less fortunate kids in our community. It's one of my favorite times of the year. This program started back in 2012. I went to Sheriff Harris and said, hey, Sheriff, can we do something to help kids that are less fortunate in the community? Never thought it was going to kick off the way it did. Myself and another deputy parked our police cars in front of Walmart. He'll stuff his car, send him to the office. By the time we get back my car stuff, we kept going back and forth, back and forth. That was 2012, right? We helped a handful of kids from all the schools. There are 18 elementary schools in Spotsylvania County. And there's a lot of kids that need help in our community. A lot of single parents that are struggling to pay bills. They got to decide whether or not to pay the light bill or get their kids Christmas. So what we do is help families with Christmas. We do a program called Operation Blue Christmas. We're at multiple locations doing toy drives. I don't know what it's going to look like this year due to COVID. But what we do is we stuff our police cars. We went from stuffing police cars to now trailers. But what we did last year is we had over 800 kids come to our office. Each kid left with multiple toys, brand new coats and hats and gloves. That's just for the kids, elementary school kids. We took over 100 teenagers shopping at Walmart, gave them $100 a piece, and they were paired with a deputy to shop. And then we took 100 senior citizens shopping at $100 a piece as well. So it's all about giving back to the community. You know, it's sad when you have a kid come up to you who is 12 or 13 and said, officer, instead of shopping for myself, can I buy food for my family? And what we do is we went on and buy food for that family. If we can identify people that are truly in need, we'll do what we can to help them during this time frame.
Because of COVID and because of just everybody right now trying to pull together and work together, how can the churches help in that area?
Churches can help by actually partnering with us to have toy drives at your church. Toy drives at multiple churches throughout the community, because our numbers are actually increasing this year. We're trying to keep our numbers down low and cut some of our numbers. But face it, due to COVID, there are a lot of people that are going to be struggling this Christmas.
So if my congregation want to participate, what type of gift, how would they buy a gift for a girl or a boy? Or?
It's up to you. Some of the things that we're looking for, I just had a business meet with me today and spent $1,000 on toys for us. It was grateful. We were grateful. Some of the things that we look for: board games, action figures, cooking sets for girls, arts and crafts, books. A lot of times kids ask for books, and last year we had to go and buy books because we didn't get enough donations of books. But we're asking for brand new toys. Anything for a kid that's in kindergarten through 5th grade, whether it's a boy or a girl. We're also asking for gift cards so that we can present them to teenagers in our community and also senior citizens in our community as well. So we're looking for gift cards to either Target or Walmart.
Could we get that in writing?
You want it in writing? You want a flyer?
Yeah,
we can get a flyer to you.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Because we would love to participate.
Yes, we will get a flyer to you. Yeah, we'll put that together. I get the team on that tomorrow.
Well, First Sergeant, I want to thank you for coming by and just sharing. And before we dismiss, already.
Come on now. We're just getting started.
I know. Can you give us some parting words to the families out there and mothers and fathers and young people in the camera from the Sheriff's Department?
Real talk. Sit down and have a conversation with your kid. Find out what your kid's doing. Don't be afraid to have this conversation, but I think we all need to sit down and have a conversation with our kids. What to do when they're out and about, what to do if they're driving around. Sit down and have that conversation. But one of the things that I always encourage parents to do is know who your child is hanging out with. Know who your child's friends are. Because if your child is missing or wandering off, we want to know who their friends are. So that when if God forbid, if we have to investigate that, we know where to go to look for your child. A lot of times parents say, oh, he's just going over little Johnny's house. Well, who's little Johnny? I don't know. Where does Johnny live? I don't know. Be involved in your kid's life. Find out who they're hanging out with. And another thing, parents, their cell phones, don't be afraid to check their cell phone, because your teenager, they don't have a job. I guarantee you, you're paying that cell phone bill. And you'd be amazed at what you find in your children's cell phone. You can find out what's going on if they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. It's right here in that cell phone. My kids get mad, but I pay the bill. It's in my name, so I do cell phone checks all the time. I went up to them, let me see your cell phone, put in your passcode, and I'm seeing what's on that cell phone.
Thank you, First Sergeant.
Thank you.
Thank you. My Hope family, Hope Nation, and all of our friends. Look forward to seeing you soon on Relational Conversations. May God bless you.